Hello and welcome back to RageGamingVideos and a new Elden Ring tier list video. As we begin going through different weapon types, today we're looking at a specific pairing of colossal weapons and colossal swords. How do I rank them all and compared to one another? This is our tier list though, S, A, B and C. These are some of your best options compared to one another, so if it even makes the list, I do think it's good. With that said though, we're going to work our way from the bottom to the top, starting with the Rotten Great Axe, which is down in C. This is one of the very few Ash of War, freedom of choice, whatever affinity, whatever Ash of War you want to put on it, that is also a Scarlet Rot weapon. Especially in Josh's opinion, arguably the best at that. You can create yourself a build that is very powerful and effective that also has the Scarlet Rot. And it's also a weapon although rarely, I do see in PvP, where it is quite scary. The damage is obviously going to be good, but then you've got the Scarlet Rot potential, which is obviously really bad in a duel where the fight goes on a bit. So while there's not overly much to say about it, it is a valid and functional weapon and one of the best Scarlet Rot options for sure. So it deserves at least an acknowledgement, and that's why it's here, much like the Staff of the Avatar. Is a bit of a boring weapon in my opinion. It's the weapon that you actually have to deal with, the big bonking hammer thing, when the avatars are facing you and jumping and butt slamming and so on. The problem is our version of this is just so bland. The AR is going to be really good, but it's ultimately just a colossal weapon with a colossal hammer moveset, and there's basically better options for that. Its Ash of War is quite unique and it was buffed pretty aggressively, having you butt bounce. Now that actually works, it does okay damage and you can just spam it, say in PvE, but it's not really going to shine or be that good anywhere, and it's kind of why you probably never see it. It deserves acknowledgement because the AI you can get with this thing is good as a colossal weapon, but it's just not that exciting, so I keep it down in C. Lastly, for C tier though, we have the Troll's Hammer, which just makes it into the list. This is quite an interesting weapon. It's kind of one that has built-in fire damage, but you can still buff it up with, say, weapon buffs, which is completely unique for the entire game. That means you can create a very powerful build with it. It's just a bit of a niche, specific build. With its moveset, you're not going to see outrageous performance in, say, PvP, but in PvE, you can see some real benefits there, especially when fully buffed up, juicing out the fire damage and benefiting from the Troll's Roar itself. You can get very good AR with this thing and output with that, and well worth using if you like the weapon. But now we've talked about C tier weapons, let's talk about some of the better ones. Let's go up to B tier. Firstly, with the Starscourge Greatswords, the Radan weapons. Down in B tier because for me, as a colossal sword, it's kind of the lowest of the good options. It's cool in design, and it has that automatic power stance setup where you have both of them. It just has that kind of forced basic moveset because you're forced into a power stance to really use them. So you don't have that much control over the weapon. To get some of the more unique and, well, powerful aspects of a colossal sword, you need to just use one of them, which kind of defeats the purpose of them. The output and potential, especially with the poise, is still very good, especially being slapped by two colossal swords. No one's going to like that. Then the Ash of War, it's two-part pull in, then slam down AoE. That's effective and very nice damage. The problem is in PvP, it's very predictable. It's a bit slow, so it's quite easy to avoid. You will see most people roll it. But in, say, free-for-all, there is potential to sneak up and snag people with that, especially the pull-in in, say, duels. They're good weapons, but compared to other colossal swords, it's not maybe the most optimal pick, which is not really that important in my opinion, but we have to acknowledge it in a tier list. Next in B tier, I wonder if people will be upset with this one, the Fallingstar Beast Jaw, which is another colossal weapon with a basic colossal kind of hammer moveset, like the Staff of the Avatar basically, but then it benefits from its magic aspect and also the Ash of War, which is kind of a target bolt, which you can absolutely spam. That's great in PvE because it can actually stagger bosses from really far away, leading to free criticals and quite reliable DPS. People do like this weapon because it is effective, but I also see it as kind of like a very singular, one-minded playstyle. You're either using the Ash or you're using the hammer moveset, and there's basically better options for that. I do acknowledge it as a good weapon though, but it's yet another one, despite being like solid overall, you never really see in PvP. So I can't really put it any higher than B tier for those reasons, much like the Prelate, Inferno, Crozier, which is basically the same thing as another weapon we're going to talk about, but less effective and doesn't have that kind of unique R2 that we'll talk about. It is a bonk machine and is very good at bonking, but there's technically a better bonking weapon, which is awkward for the Inferno Crozier. It does look really cool though. The moveset works for this weapon. Obviously, it's a hammer. It's effective and the output's solid. It's just overshadowed by another pick, which is just really unfortunate for this weapon, but it still deserves to be on the list because what it does and how well it does it it's a good weapon. Much like the Zweihander, the last B tier option here, which is basically used by your PvPers who like to use these Zweihanders as their Colossal Sword option. The reason for that is because it's significantly lower on the weight compared to other Colossal Swords, and you can put any affinity on it, and you can put any Ash of War in it, like the really good ones. I want to see a lot of PvP builds when using this weapon in particular is having like 5 or 6 different ones for different affinities and different ashes to suddenly pull out, usually in invasion scenarios. Pulling out AoEs in tight corridors, then suddenly lions clawing a single person to kill them. That kind of weapon swapping, this type of weapon really works. But compared to another weapon on this list, it basically does the same thing, a little bit lighter, but noticeably less AR like Peak. So I don't want to put it higher than B for that reason. Now we move up to the A tier though. We'll start with the Royal Greatsword, which is just a funny weapon. As a magic and ice-based Colossal Sword, it fits a strange category. Building status with a weapon that's kind of slow like this is not the most reliable thing until we consider how it does it with the Ash of War Wolf's Assault, which for some reason was buffed to have even more hyper armor, even though it had loads of it anyway. So the entire time that you're doing this Ash of War, you've got hyper armor, allowing for kind of infinite trading using it, and then you just do it again and again and again and again, because the hyper armor is going to protect you. You can kind of just blindly do this over and over, even in PvE, even in boss fights, where the DPS potential, the output because of that, is really good. And then it's just a good Colossal Sword on its own with the good Colossal Sword sort of moveset. In PvP, sure, you can blindly Ash of War over and over, but you are left a bit vulnerable and kind of stuck in a longer animation where someone could harass you with ranged incantations or spells or ashes. So while it's very good in PvE, it's not as good in PvP, so I think A tier is where it belongs. Much like our next one, the Ruins Greatsword, a legendary armament that has 2 aspects to it that are very good. Firstly, the heavy, which has a unique sort of magic slam attached to it, costing no FP to do, which is really cool. But then the Ash of War itself, that long range, kind of wide Ash of War, very comparable to the Blasphemous Blade Ash of War, knocking people up into the air, dealing great damage, and is absolutely spammable. In fact, it can be a great way to trade in PvP, it can be a great way to AoE multiple targets in PvE and PvP, and you can rely on it entirely as your DPS option in PvE. Then it's also just a great, very high AR at that Colossal Sword, only requiring a meager amount of intelligence to run, and then it's mostly just a strength weapon. It doesn't have the insane potential and variety that my top pick does for that weapon type, but it is a really good option, and that's why it's A tier. Also like our next Colossal Sword, Malekith's Black Blade. They buffed the Destined Death aspect of this Ash of War to last a full minute, meaning it's going to be there the entire time you're fighting, whether that's a boss fight or a duel or whatever. That provides 10% health reduction while applied, which is a big damage hit for big health bar bosses. It deals damage on hit and also like a dot, a damage over time, which is cool in PvP because even if they somehow roll it, the dot can somehow clip them, apply Destined Death and deal its dot damage anyway. The Ash of War has hyper armor, so it's great for trading for that purpose. So I really like this weapon, and it works perfect in unison with the dagger, the black knife, applying both and stacking the Destined Death effect. Next for our Colossal Swords, we have to talk about the God Slayer's Greatsword, which has on its Ash of War Black Fire, which deals % health damage over time, meaning if you're facing a boss with a big health bar, Black Fire will deal even more damage. Also, this Ash of War has a multiple hit combo to it, allowing you to swing, deal Black Fire, swing, deal Black Fire. On the upwards hit, you can even tick and trade with that, and you can roll out of it after a patch change, allowing you to feint the Ash of War or just, roll out when things go wrong. That's a really powerful tool and really reliable for this weapon. It's also got quite a unique moveset in that it's very vertical attacks, considering this is a Colossal Sword. So I really like this one. And again, I think it deserves to be A tier. Last for A tier though, we have the Axe of Godfrey. Yes, a colossal weapon, not a Colossal Sword. The Axe of Godfrey was very depressing for a long time, but after a major buff to its Regal Roar Ash of War, it's now much more viable. Now the Regal Roar itself actually benefits from the Beast Talisman, the Beast Roar Talisman, so hey, it does a lot more damage, but admittedly it's a very slow Ash of War, so it's unlikely to land there unless someone makes a big mistake. The real powerhouse is the first part of the unique heavy attack combo that comes from the Warcry aspect of Regal Roar, giving you this really fast, sudden slam down, then swing up with the axe, which can be relied upon so aggressively in PvP as your primary, even only trading and attack tool. It's so reliable because the slam is pretty reasonable range, then the upward sort of uppercut is nuts damage, and it can come out like at a moment's notice. In PvE, you can entirely rely on just that part of this weapon to crush bosses. Because it's a big heavy attack, it'll stagger them as well, and there are many ways to make this weapon very strong because of that. I found in my testing that it's just a very solid weapon now, so again, it's another one that I think deserves A tier status. But now we come to the S tier, and these two I believe are pretty predictable. Firstly, we have the best Colossal weapon, Giant Crusher, which is the highest damage in one-hit weapon in the game. As always, I did that one build where I tried to see how much damage I could get with it, landing a cool 16,000 on one of the toughest enemies in the game. Pretty crazy, because I just one-shot it. But if you scale back and make a more reliable, you can use it everywhere kind of build, you can deal a good 5k a hit, no problem. And it's largely down to the fact that it has a unique heavy attack, that sort of flip that deals extra damage. And again, there's many ways to enhance the power of a charged heavy attack. That can lead to like 2 or 3 shotting many bosses. It can lead to hilarious hyper armor and super high poise. It's a very good weapon for a single hit dealing big damage and raw strength at that. Really represents the Colossal weapon type of gameplay, and that's why I think Prelate's Inferno Crozier just doesn't compete, because they do the same thing, but Giant Crusher is just better. It's a bit of a predictable weapon with a simple moveset in PvP though, but its output cannot be ignored. Lastly though, my favorite of the strength weapon type, it's just the Greatsword. Guts' Greatsword. This thing is just so versatile. Compared to the Zweihander, it's the same weapon, the same reach, except it's heavier. But the benefit is your AR is going to be higher, so you deal more damage per hit. So if you're willing to put up with the weight, which I'm sure a lot of people are, it's incredible. Compared to the other Colossal swords with the same movesets, this stands out because it's buffable. You can make it fire, magic, ice, bleed, whatever you want to buff this up with, say a grease or an incantation, and it can take any of the Colossal sword Ashes of War, some of the top tier ones like Lion's Claw or Giant's Hunt. It's so versatile, you could do whatever you want with it, run it in so many different types of heavy strength builds. So for me, it's S tier, and it's my favorite weapon. But there you have it. Here is our complete list. I've organized things so the strongest is on the left side of each individual tier, although as always, it's very minimal the difference between the weapons in the tiers. Let me know what you think of the list. Is there any weapons that I should have included? But hopefully this helps you work out which kind of weapon you want to run when it comes to Colossal weapons. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.